All right, so you want to know how evil's in this world. None of us are born evil. How did Hitler desire? Because nobody goes to the fridge unless they're hungry or they're bored or whatever, they need some comfort food. So if somebody doesn't have a gun to your head and you go around murdering, you get a whole country just to take over the other countries, to murder babies, to asphyxiate people, there's something obviously very, very, very desirous. Now, this is a very important thing. People think Hitler was crazy. Hitler was a genius, but he desired to kill people. This person, unfortunately, this lady, this guy was murdered in the park, and this lady says, this guy was my son. I'm just interested to know why. And a guy wrote to the paper, he says, well, actually, I just saw him and I shot him. I guess I like killing people. There's something deeply, deeply, deeply desirous in many people to kill, to rape, to harm. So we have to understand the psychology of it. If you just say the guy's a monster, you're not going to address the issue. And the answer is very, very, very simple. All of us, and it came to me this morning, that's why I'm sharing this. All of us have, let's say, like a car. You can have the most amazing car in the world. This car can do anything. It can drive by itself and all this kind of stuff. If the car doesn't have gas, the car's not going to go anywhere. And the same thing is in life. We have different parts of ourself. I don't want to go too deep. I want to keep it simple. And the bottom line is either we're happy or we're not. Now, if we're not happy, doesn't mean that we don't have a motivating force. So when a person is happy, they basically want to get what they want. That's the most normal thing that a human being has, the desire to fulfill your desires. But, and this is a very, very important but, there's not only depression. Everybody's familiar with depression. A lot of people don't know how depression happens. According to Jewish mysticism, it's very, very interesting. What depression is it's a hatred of oneself. And because the person, if you want to call it the ego, is angry at the body, the ego is angry at you, if you want to call it that. Now, because the person hates themselves, whether it's induced from shame, whatever the reason is, but there's this hatred towards themselves, therefore the corollary of that hatred is, well, if you hated somebody, would you want to do what they want? No. So again, when you're happy, you want to do what you want. So therefore, that's one of the classic symptoms of depression is a lack of a sex drive, a lack of an appetite. Well, these are things that you do for yourself because you like yourself, and therefore when you're hungry, you want to make yourself happy. Or let's say when your child is hungry, you want to give them food. But let's say somebody else is hungry in the street. Okay, if you're a nice person, you want to help them. But let's say you hate that person. You're just not going to care about them, right? So the point is that if a person hates themselves, they don't care about themselves. However, depression is not the only way a person can come to hate themselves. Depression is when I feel ashamed of myself. Nobody else has shamed me, but I am ashamed, or my ego hates me for, let's say I feel stuck or I should have done something, whatever the reason is. Let's call it guilt. But there's another type of depression in this world, and that's called repression. And that's very, very, very common. And repression is when I put you down. And this happens in most societies, that the children are repressed. I'll just give you an example. This lady told me their teacher, they used to basically torture the kids. And this is very common in many societies. The adults, the teachers, they're horrific. I don't want to go into some of the things, but they're really cruel. Now, why? Because someone did it to them. Somebody repressed them. So instead of them feeling joy, they feel fear. And it's critically important to understand this. Why? Because when people feel fear, that is a negative feeling. So I can be depressed, but I'm not feeling in pain, right? Depression doesn't feel painful. It's lethargic. It's sadness. But fear, anxiety, is a great suffering. I am suffering now. I am in pain. And then what happens is it causes another emotion, and that's the emotion of jealousy. Now, jealousy creates hatred. Why? Because in Hebrew, the word for kina, jealousy, is similar to the word for hatred, sina, which comes from the word on, which has in it the idea of annihilate. Why? Very simple. Because what in the end of the day is hatred, or let's say anger? Anger is an emotion associated to hate. It's because it's unfair. So let's say you, spit in my face, so I may hate you, or I may be angry at you. Why? Because it's unfair. Now let's say I spit in your face first, and then you spit in my face. I wouldn't be angry at you because I deserved it. So you see, it's not the action, it's the assumption that what happened is unfair. So in jealousy, the assumption is, as a man once told me, that a Russian told him, he says, the difference between America, and this is a critical difference, America, because again, America's not a repressive society, America and Russia, he says, in America, if your neighbor has a nice Cadillac, you say, oh, I'm going to go get a Cadillac. In Russia, if your neighbor has a Cadillac, you say, oh, I'm going to tell the government that he has a Cadillac and they'll put him in jail. That's how it was, because it was you weren't allowed to have like possessions. And that's really how it was. And that's normal behavior. It's very important to understand the Russians aren't some kind of monsters. Each and every one of us, when we are suffering, we become a monster. We make others suffer. And the reason is we become jealous. So repression is a very real thing. And that is why the only solution to life, and it's not a simple solution because it depends on a lot of factors. As psychiatrists say, 60% of happiness depends on you, 40% depends on circumstances. So be that as it may, or maybe it's the reverse, but be that as it may, the fact is the best solution to life is, as Elijah the prophet told the father of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, he said to tell Rabbi Yisrael before he passed away, this became his motto, this became the way of the Jewish people: fear no one or anything but God. Don't worry about what anyone says. It doesn't matter. Nobody has the right to repress you. No one has the right to tell you what to do. You are the only one that should be telling you what to do. And love your friend as much as you love yourself, meaning unconditionally. And if somebody is a jerk, try to feel compassion. They've been repressed. People are not jerks. Nobody's born a jerk. Somebody repressed them, or they're feeling anxiety, they're feeling jealous. And if you do that, you won't have anger in your heart, and you'll be your highest, best, most natural, normal self.